Why are you looking at a map, Andrew?
There's a big thunderstorm going on right now at Craters of the Moon. And it's coming down pretty bad. Andrew Stephen, and I'm someone who tends to say yes to things before fully thinking them through. And before we walked across Spain, before our road trip to Alaska, before we backpacked the Sierra Nevadas, this is a story about the summer of 2017, when Rocky and I camped our way from Los Angeles to Glacier National Park in Montana. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about the national parks, because it's worth saying, before they were national parks, they were. Peoples, animals, communities, stories, food, fire, tradition, shifting landscapes, sacred sites, and ecosystems existed in careful balance, stewarded for millennia by the indigenous nations who called these places home. For thousands of years, the lands we now call protected were anything but abandoned. They were carefully maintained, burned and replanted, hunted and harvested, prayed over and sung to. They weren't just places on a map. Rocky and I wanted to see them for ourselves. Not just the views on the postcard, but the places where history lingers. The spaces where past and present collide. So, we packed up the car and hit the road. And as we quickly learned, the story of national parks is bigger and more complicated than the brochures let on. The first official national park was Yellowstone, designated in 1872. But it wasn't the first land officially preserved by the U.S. government. In 1864, Abraham Lincoln signed a bill protecting Yosemite Valley and Mariposa Grove. Teddy Roosevelt, the man most associated with the creation of the national park system, famously said that the parks existed for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. He meant settlers, because in the early years of the park system, national parks weren't just places of conservation, they were places of erasure. Indigenous communities were removed, their homes burned, their food sources eliminated. The Blackfeet, the Crow, the Shoshone, the Ute, the Nez Perce, the Duwamish, the Cherokee, the Anishinaabe, and so many other nations found themselves forced from lands they had lived on long before anyone called them public. It's a history we don't talk about often, but it's one that lingers in every trail, every valley, every towering peak, in every state, and every place we live. Today, national parks are celebrated as one of America's greatest ideas.
When we think of our national parks, we often picture majestic peaks, spectacular wildlife, and iconic natural wonders. But over the last decade, national parks have seen a steady increase in visitors.
When you get here, expect to encounter a lot of other people.
Things can get kind of crowded, and though there are 424 national parks, more than a quarter of those visitors are flooding the top 8, more than 80 million people.
And in the summer of 2017, we had a plan. Pack the car, hit the road, and spend a month driving from Los Angeles to Montana, stopping at as many national parks and monuments as we could along the way. The goal? Make it there in one piece, with the car, the gear, and our dignity mostly intact. Because a great American road trip sounds like a dream until you're holding your tent down like it's a weather balloon, realizing too late that next gas station 120 miles was not a suggestion, and coming face to face with the fine print of bear-proof food storage. Sounds easy, right? Good morning. I don't know if you
the mic's blown out, but it's really windy. Like, look at it. Kept us up last night. Never had to fight wind for sleep before.
Tucked away in eastern Nevada, just miles from the Utah border, Great Basin National Park is one of the least visited national parks in the U.S., which is exactly what makes it special.
The Great Basin is a place of great space. You can see for long distances. It's a place that has very little human development in it of a large scale. The Great Basin is a place where the natural world is the primary world.
Despite being overshadowed by some more famous parks, Great Basin has a unique kind of beauty, one that sneaks up on you. It's a place where the silence is deafening, and the stars feel closer.
So we're in our tent. We just looked at the stars, looked through a telescope here at Great Basin, and it was a good first day here. So we're starting this hike to Stella Lake at about 10,000 feet. It's about a mile and a half out or so. See you then.
From sagebrush-filled desert valleys to alpine lakes and snow-covered peaks, this is one of the few national parks where you can hike for hours without seeing another soul. Wheeler Peak towers over the park at 13,000 feet. Its slopes, home to some of the oldest living trees on Earth, Bristol cone pines, nearly 5,000 years old. And underground, the park has even more to offer. Lehman Caves, a vast underground maze of limestone. For centuries, indigenous peoples, including the Western Shoshone, knew of these caves long before settlers arrived. Today, rangers work to preserve what remains of this underground wonder. And for us, this was just the beginning.
Bye, Great Basin.
We made our way north to Idaho towards a park I had long wanted to visit ever since I read its name, Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve.
So I'm not very familiar with Idaho, but we were just driving and we're on this bridge and we're like, whoa! Snake River just kind of snuck up on us there.
One thing I've learned about national parks, while some exist to preserve beauty, others exist to preserve history. The good, the bad, and the deeply uncomfortable.
On December 7th, around 8 o'clock in the morning, Japanese airplanes bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii.
Since the unprovoked and dastardly attack, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
It was very painful because you not just were cast as enemies, you lost everything materially.
After the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, the United States government decided Japanese Americans were enemies of the state. Within months, over 100,000 U.S. citizens and legal residents were ordered to leave their homes and report to one of 10 remote internment centers.
President Franklin Roosevelt ordered them rounded up and sent to internment camps, most of them in the West. One, Minidoka, was right here in Idaho, near Twin Falls. 10,000 Japanese Americans passed through this desolate, windy outpost. Not much is left of Minidoka today, but what is there was designated a national monument last year by President Clinton.
Minidoka is a reminder that not all the stories held within these landscapes are easy to hear. Some are beautiful, others are painful, but all of them matter. Leaving Minidoka, we continued north, where the land itself told an entirely different kind of story.
11, 10, 9, ignition sequence start.
In the 1920s, when geologist Harold T. Stearns visited southern Idaho, he looked out at the vast, jagged lava fields and thought, "This place looks like the moon." He wasn't wrong. The rugged, desolate landscape felt more alien than earthly. Stearns proposed the name Craters of the Moon, and in 1924, President Calvin Coolidge declared it a national monument to protect its unique volcanic terrain. In 1969, just after Apollo 11, when NASA needed a place to train astronauts for their next lunar mission, they needed rugged, unforgiving terrain, something that mirrored the moon's surface, so they came here. And our trip was very similar to theirs. We quickly set up camp and started exploring the park, paying no mind to the ominous rain clouds in the distance.
We didn't avoid the storm.
Before we knew it, park rangers were making their way through the campground, urging everyone to take shelter, either in their campers, cars, or at the visitor center to wait out the storm. At that moment, the rain wasn't coming down too hard, and with an early start planned for the next morning, we made a quick decision. We hurried to pack our gear, hoping to keep it dry before the worst of the storm hit.
So we're hoping there's a little town nearby. We're hoping Arco, which I'm hoping that we can stay the night there before we head out.
The road stretched ahead, slick and endless, the storm showing no signs of letting up. Every mile was a question. Was there a safe place ahead, or would we be driving through the night? We didn't know the answer yet, but we'd find out soon enough. That's next time